Hey everyone. Hello. Uh Today is gonna be just packed full of really heartfelt, valuable realness. I hope you guys are in it for the depth today because that's what this is gonna be. I want him to grow alongside me, and I've also called the subheading activate your deeper spiritual senses in your marriage. This will probably just make some people angry, and you'll listen to my message for a period of time, and then you'll just shut it off. And that's okay. And there are some of you who may listen to this and like eat it up. Like this is what I've been needing to hear. And I give a lot of these trainings, but this one feels different because it's really real for me. It's really real. So it's funny because throughout the last 5 years running this business, I have heard so many women. I'm surrounded by women who are propelling themselves forward continually. Like progress is the air we breathe, and without it, we don't know who we are. We feel lost. It feels like death before death. And one of the most common things that we relate on is feeling like in some way, some capacity, our husband is stuck in the mud, stuck in the past, stuck in boxes, stuck in linear mentality. I was just on a call earlier today, and the woman described it. He doesn't exactly have a possibilities mindset, she said. I'm like, oh, that's a good way of saying it. Someone else in the group said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do because our vibrations are so different. It feels like we're on opposite planets. Um, it's really real, isn't it? And so I've sought out, this is the third or fourth time that I've talked about this concept where it seems like, I'm here and he's here. I mean, if we're going to just like say it what it is, this is how we see it. We see it as I'm here and he's here. And what am I supposed to do with that? Right. And I don't know that I've successfully, I don't know that I'm really pleased with the trainings I've given so far up to this point. And we'll see if this one's any different. Really, truly. I feel very vulnerable giving this training because I don't have this all figured out. I'm navigating this one as I go. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you a bit of our story in a minute. But this shows up in marriages with a lot of different things. The two that I hear most commonly are the spiritual growth that we're doing, where he may be still kind of linear, stuck in boxes with religion or that sort of thing, or may just have more of like a straightforward approach to faith or those kinds of concepts, or may even not be open to them at all. Where you may be seeing visions every night and walking and talking with Christ, and it's like, okay, it feels very different, right? Like it feels like there are two very different experiences here. And the other area I see this showing up a lot is money, where particularly if you're a business owner and you have had to take a lot of risks and you have, put yourself out there, especially in the online space, where it has opened up so many possibilities. I mean, I feel like the career that I have would not really exist without the internet, because how would people know what I do? And what I do is so niche. How would I ever have, a client base were it not for the internet? It's this whole practically made up thing that I created. right? And many of us are that way. We're in these service-based businesses. And so as a result, we've had to really face like, what is money? And how is it different than what I was taught? And how is it different than what society says? Um, and, uh, and grow our money mindset, for lack of a better way of saying it. And our husband may still be very linear. He may still be in a corporate job. He may still be, feeling like he has to save 90% of every paycheck and completely disregard your income because you're not using it to build the family's wealth, or because, you're not making as much as he's making, or even you may be making way more than he's making, and somehow he still dismisses all the income that you make, or the way that your career has changed their life. I was speaking with a woman earlier, I guess last week, and she literally retired her husband, and he still will make comments like, I just don't really see how your business has made that big of a difference in our lifestyle. Which, she brought him home, and they never give a thought about the next thing they're going to pay for. And so, so we find ourselves in these situations, right? I would love to hear in the comments your scenario. I would love to hear, like, where do you relate? Where do you find yourself being in this expansiveness, and your husband typically meets you with the same line of thought that he had, and his father had, and his father's father had? Where do you see this showing up? And probably the most difficult part about this is that it can hold us back. There are literal ways that this can hold us back. And nobody likes to say that. We all like to say, I'm so independent and it doesn't matter and it doesn't hold me back and it shouldn't affect me and yada, yada. But the reality is we are in co-creation together. I mean, we got married for a reason, right? Like, we are in co-creation together. And so it does affect us. There are some situations where it affects us more than others. Like, there are some husbands who literally will like say, no, you may not. And that's been the dynamic of the marriage for a long time. So she feels like, okay, I can only talk about this in so many different ways. And he's saying no. And that's a literal, like, being held back. And in those situations, I definitely recommend like some therapy and some, like, go to some traditional things so that you can get to where there's some equality there. But who I really want to speak to today is, like, there is equality. There is equality. He loves you. He does support you. He supported you to build your business. He supported you to, pursue your dreams and a lot of different ways, or he's at least allowed it. He's at least been like, okay, I don't get it, but I'll like let you go ahead and do this. What am I going to do? Stop you, right? Like, marriages where that equality base is there, and yet his mindset and the way he thinks about things and the way he feels about things feels like it's holding you back. Even in those scenarios, again, this is a co-creation. Like, who do we think we have to be? Jesus? Like, that I do get stuck in that. Like, I will get stuck in that in my relationships. I would think, okay, well, if Jesus was in this marriage, like, would he be bogged down because his partner, has stinking thinking, or because his partner can't see beyond his nose, or because it's right? Like, and I think, well, then I should be better. I should do better. And I don't think that those thoughts ever serve us. But that's where I go. That's right where I go when I'm in a triggered state, or when I'm, not feeling my best, not meeting my needs, or I start to fall into victim mentality. I go to, like, if I could just be better, then this wouldn't be affecting me. And I think that's not the right direction either. Do you relate with that, guys? Just type in the comments, like, yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm supposed to be like Jesus too, if you relate with that. We also put unrealistic expectations on what our marriage is supposed to look like when we have finally arrived at power partnership. I want to break this down a little bit, and I want to bust some myths about power partners today. You guys in for that? Are you down for that? Power partners. What do you guys think are the characteristics of power partners? What kinds of things do you think exist in a power partnership? Like side by side progress. I mean, stereotypically, like, what are we seeing, right? Both people are happy. Both people feel really fulfilled. They're both like, pursuing their passion and they're doing it together. Typically, it involves running a business together. And what else? Sure, they're having great sex all the time. They also co-parent perfectly. Like there's never any issues around like how he thinks it should be done versus how she thinks it should be done. They're probably also both very like compassionate, like they're solving some problem in the world together. Whether they're both like youth pastors of a church side by side, or they also run out of their shed in their property they've turned it into a women's shelter and they're running. I literally am speaking about some people that I know. They're running a women's shelter off of their property alongside their business coaching company or whatever, right? They're taking risks together. What else do you guys think of when you think of a power partnership? But these are some of the things we think of, right? With a power partnership, we think all these things, and we need to do a little bit of myth busting around this because part of this, like we have righteous desires, right? When we think I want to be in a power partnership, like our desires are so good. Of course we want that. But then the pressure starts to come in and then all of a sudden we find ourselves trying to make our marriage into something else. It's just yet another set of boxes, right? That we're trying to shove ourselves into. What about when all of the risks that they're taking don't pan out? Like every single one just literally like boom, 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 doesn't work. What about that? Are they still a power partnership? Well, yeah, duh. But do you think they feel like they are when they're sitting looking around, filing bankruptcy, for example? Like, you think they still feel like a power partnership? Probably not, because society doesn't say, oh, yeah, people who file bankruptcy together, that's a power partnership. That sucks, right? Like, wait a second, they did everything they could. Or or people who believe different things. I've got some clients right now where, she's left their faith and he has stayed. Does that mean they're no longer a power partnership? Does that mean they can't be a power partnership if they believe two different things? Does that mean that like they can't have like good intimacy? Does that mean that they can't really like they'll never really get a full experience in their marriage? Like that sucks. Is that really what we think? That sucks, right, you guys? Or, they're running alongside each other. And then one person gets in a car accident and is now paralyzed from the neck down. Are they a power partnership? Does that still count for them? And I'm giving really extreme examples here because I'm guessing none of you on this call are in those situations. You could be, but I'm guessing you're not. But I'm hoping you're putting yourself in these scenarios going, oh my gosh, duh, right? We just have so much judgment and expectation around what our marriage is supposed to be, what a power partnership is supposed to be. And I think we need to redefine that. And I'm not going to sit here and give you some definition because I think it's defined in here and alongside our partner. I think it's a great question to go sit down and go, what do you think a power partnership is? Do you think we have one? And if we don't, could we have one? Like, what would it take? What would it take? So I want to give a little bit about my situation. So if you guys followed me for very long at all, you know that about 10 years ago, my husband and I went through our rock bottom of rock bottoms. We had tried up to that point to be a power partnership. It probably wasn't really in my vocabulary back then, I don't think, but we tried running a couple different businesses together. We owned a food truck together. We tried running a couple different multi-level marketing businesses side by side and incurred a lot of debt in these different pursuits and stuff. And we also were popping out babies like crazy. Like I'm one of those people who just doesn't say no. Like I just keep saying yes, like I can do everything. Sometimes that really messes me up. You guys relate with that. I just say like, yeah, oh yeah, I can be Superwoman and do all the things. And then I find myself like, I'm drowning, help. That's pretty much how I run my life. But anyway, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But anyways, we that was our trajectory, and we also graduated college side by side. He changed his degree to my degree. We graduated with the same degree. About ready to have our second baby. Like there were some things, like we had some of the stereotypical check mark things, right? About power partnership. And my husband let me know that he had a secret porn addiction that he had been suffering with since he was probably 9 years old. And I knew nothing about it. And I was absolutely devastated. So we separated for 6 months, and it was so hard. And I think that part of what was so hard for me was I had put all my eggs into this one basket of my family and my marriage, and here was my husband like showing me this side of him that I didn't even know existed. And it wasn't just like something to sneeze at. It was this other side of him that meant that there had been tons of lies and betrayal. There had been, intents in his heart that I didn't know about. Like it affected us in the deepest way. Our sexual intimacy. It was so unfathomable that I was diagnosed with PTSD. I was just like, wait a second. Like we were struggling, but we were running together, I thought, and then I found out there was this whole other side of him. Well, what's funny is, I look back on that now, hindsight's 2020, and he the problem wasn't that he told me. The problem had existed the whole time. It's just that, I was having my reaction to it. But the problem wasn't that he told me. When he told me, that was actually a massive sign of progress. I wasn't in it for that at that time. I could not see that that was about progress. I couldn't see that that was the very answer to everything I had been praying for greater depth in my marriage, and for like us to be more connected to our purpose, and for us to really understand why we were here on the planet, what we were meant to do. Like I couldn't see that that was actually answering a lot of those prayers by him rooting this thing out of him. And I have total compassion on myself. Of course, I couldn't see all that. I was just absolutely devastated and hurt and betrayed. But it also meant that I had no compassion for him. We didn't have to separate. And it's still to this day one of the deepest pains that he carries, that he showed me a part of him, and I completely shut him down and rejected him in every possible way, including making him sleep on his dad's couch for 6 months. And that's real too. Like I did really do that. And it really did show that I had no maturity, emotional maturity in me to hold space for him having any other part of himself. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And so during that time, it was really another, 3 years of him fighting like crazy. I would demand honesty, but then I would judge the crap out of him every time he shared anything. And again, I have so much compassion on myself because everything he was sharing hurt me. It was like, you're looking at what? You're doing what? You did what? You went where? Like it was so painful. And then, or you lied about it for this amount of time when I thought you were being honest. Like it was so painful. And so I have so much compassion for myself, but at the same time, I don't know how he did what he did. I was holding him to impossible double standards. I couldn't hold space for him because it didn't fit into my ideal for what our marriage was supposed to be, what our family was supposed to be. And so it was like daily hostility. I would just approach him with so much resentment and anger and rage and frustration and disapproval and judgment. And I could not receive him. I could not accept any part of him. And so during that, 3 years is a long time, right? During that time, he would do good things. It wasn't like every moment of every day he was in the throes of his addiction, but I could not receive any of the good about him. I had decided that all the things he was showing me in ways that he was struggling trumped any other part of him and defined him. I was so stuck. I wanted us to be growing spiritually together, and I wanted us to be soaring together, and I wanted us to both be closer to Jesus together, and I wanted us to both be creating a successful business together and a successful life together. I wanted all those things. I just couldn't see that that's exactly what we were doing. Like, you're hearing my story right now thinking, whoa, they did that. Like, I'm telling you about how we were in the throes slaying the dragons, but the whole time I was going through it, I could not see it. I just felt like I was burning in hell the whole time, right? That's the challenge we face, isn't it? Like, I'm being so real with you guys today because I've been praying about this, and I'm like, I know that there are women whose hearts are aching around this because we feel like we're just burning up in their hell. That's what it feels like, doesn't it? Man, it's real. I'm just here to say it's so real. But there's a higher perspective. We're not actually burning with them. So right now, we find ourselves in a new situation. My husband is struggling with a couple of different things, and I navigated, how do I share about this while still honoring and respecting him? We've talked a lot about the pornography addiction, and he has been very gracious about, like, share whenever you feel like you need to share. It's fine. And he does the same, but I'm of course in more opportunities to share because of my business. He'll share at church sometimes or something, but with regard to his current struggles, it's different. And so I've really, I've wanted to honor that, but I had to really take a close look at my heart and recognize I've also been hiding. I think I've also been hiding. There's that little voice that comes in that says, wait a minute, you're struggling in your marriage? Hold on. Doesn't that make you unqualified? And I've had to wrestle with that. I've had to wrestle with that over the last couple of months. And because of course it doesn't, just makes me more relatable again. But the reality is we built out of that. if you don't know our story already. We built out of that. We ended up like just feeling so blissful. That's of course where the idea and the impetus for my whole business came from. And we ended up having a second honeymoon. It wasn't like official. It just was like a year and a half long period where it was just literally total bliss. And we decided to have a fourth child, and it was just so lovely. And then I decided to start my business, and we did that. And he continued to make career changes and advances, and we got to 2021, and CJ came into my business, and we were coaching side by side, and we were running some lives together, and we co-authored a chapter in a multi-author book side by side. All this stuff happened in 2021, and then 2022 was like kamikaze, just driving straight into crash. And CJ is struggling, and it's he's pulled out of my business, he's pulled out of a lot of different things, he's had career changes, he's questioning a lot of things, he's got a ton of self-doubt, and he's got a lot of difficulty, and it's really real again. I'm like, oh, I really forgot. I forgot for a little while what this felt like. And so when I looked at like showing up again and sharing with you all, from this really real place, I looked at some really specific things. How do I share about this in a way that can really serve people? And the reality is, this is so different. And yes, the nature of what he's struggling with is so different than it was before. And so that is a factor. But when I look at my man, and I want you to ask yourself this too, when I look at my husband, I have to ask myself, is he nourishing to the planet? Is the man that I married, is he nourishing to the planet? And if the answer is no, then totally reevaluate. This is the wrong life for you. If the answer is no, you probably are not in the right marriage. But if the answer is yes, is my husband nourishing to the planet? Does his heart contribute something? Does he have light? Is he a good father? Does he care about people? Is he a good man? Then this is for you. Then we get to ask ourselves, how much space can I give him to transform, to change, to go through? Was I really sent here to change him? Or was I sent here to experience life with him? Power partners go through this stuff. They do. And I think what we miss is the fact that this is completely divine. That's what we miss in all of this. We think things should be different than what they are. But if they were supposed to be different, then they would be. Like, there is no messing up the great plan. We can't. So that means what is happening right now? And the words coming out of your husband's mouth right now, it's divine. It's beautiful. There's stuff to learn in it. When you think that your husband might be holding you back because of his mindset or his vibe or his energy or his, not possibility mindset or all of that, what that actually is opportunities for you to look at, what is this a mirror for me? Like, if I'm uncomfortable, how can I grow through this? right? What is this showing me about myself? Everything I think that he needs to fix about him, it's triggering discomfort in me. What is that discomfort? Is it fear of abandonment? Is it fear of rejection? Is it fear of judgment from others? What is that? And then that's your work, right? That's that beautiful place where you get to transform and change. I want to call you now to deeper planes of spirituality. I want to call you to, and the conclusions I come to in my marriage are not going to be the conclusions you come to in your marriage. That's why it's hard for me to do these trainings. I'd much rather just sit with you and talk to you about your marriage. Then we can help you come to the answers about your marriage, about your husband, all of that. But one of the things that I'll often do with my clients, and that I find myself doing a lot right now, is tuning in to my partner's higher self and having a conversation with him about what is going on. What's going on? What am I supposed to do with this? What does he need? Like, we have an executive council about him. What does he need? How can I be there for him? He's struggling. What does he need? Okay, this is like, we have to be willing to activate our spiritual gifts if we want to stay in our sovereignty in this experience. Otherwise, we just get swallowed up in it, in his hell, right? It literally is. We know, like, spiritual women know we can create heaven on earth right now, or we can create hell on earth right now. We get to choose, right? And some of the ways our husbands choose to stay in their mindsets around their whatever it is feels like hell to us. It feels like prison to us. It might not even be their own personal hell because they're not super aware, right, of it necessarily. But we get to choose what we want to create. And if we want to stay in our heaven, there's a tendency to want to gaslight ourselves through this. Like, try not to see what he is. Sometimes our husbands don't let us even choose that. My husband is one that does. Like, if I don't want to see, he won't show me. I don't want to live my marriage like that. I don't want to just pretend like things are what they aren't. I want to see everything fully. To me, that's a spiritual path. That's like an enlightened path. And so I want to see everything. I want to be so connected with him. I want to know his fears and his worries. I want to be the person that he cries in front of. That maybe the only person that he's ever felt safe to cry in front of. That's the kind of marriage I want, because I don't want him to have to go through all that alone. Who else if not me, right? No one else. The world does not have places and spaces for our men. So sometimes women will resent that because it's like, why does it always have to be me? Well, who else is it going to be? Probably not his parents. And if he was crying to his mama, you wouldn't like it. Right? His upbringing probably was hostile and very like, be a man, suck it up, have it all figured out. And now that you're an adult, and now that you're a father, and now that you're a husband, you better not have issues, right? Like, you have to have it all figured out. That's so unfair and sucky. And what we know is, and I'm guessing if you're still here, you're like me. We want depth. We want true intimacy. We look around and we see couples, and we all know couples where, they were married for 50 years and, the husband dies and it's all, oh, that's so sad. And look at that sweet romantic couple. And they friggin' couldn't even stand to be in the same room as each other. We all know couples like that. And I think there's something about us. We were born at this time for a reason. And there's something about us right now in the world that is shifting and changing where we're saying, no, like, it can't be like that anymore. I won't have it be like that anymore. So we get to look at this and how do we do this different? How do we create our own personal heaven in such a way that it invites them in? Just invites. That's the feminine energy way, right? Doesn't nag, it doesn't push, it doesn't get all up in the micromanaging of what they're doing and how they're doing it. It just invites. And the invitation is so delicious when we are able to just give ourselves a great big wide space. Well, one of the things I wrote down that I really wanted to share with you guys all today is he needs lots of grace and compassion for whatever it is that he's always saying or thinking or feeling, or whatever stuck mindset he has or depression he's experiencing. He needs lots of grace and compassion. And the more that you can give that, the more he'll let you in to understand, to see, to hold. But the key to that is the more you show your own self grace and compassion for your own struggles, the more he's going to be like, oh, maybe there actually is a way out of this. Maybe she doesn't actually want to fix me, because look at how much grace she shows herself. And the next layer of this is, so often the things that our husbands are difficult about, that we see as their weaknesses or their struggles, are actually their spirits rebelling against the status quo. So I'm going to say that again. So often the things that we think are our husband's weaknesses are actually the ways that their spirit is rejecting the status quo. So he's depressed because he hates his job and he complains about it all the time. He's just not conscious. He's not going inward all the time. He's not aware of like, oh, wait a minute, maybe my spirit has a higher wisdom. Maybe that's why I feel this way, right? So he complains about money all the time. He feels so trapped. There's this whole society that is literally constantly bombarding him with messages about how trapped he is around money. And he is thinking about it all the time. He is like in this, like, there is anger, there is depression, there is frustration, there is like all these things around it. How is his spirit rejecting the status quo right now? And we can't point that stuff out, and we can't draw conclusions without them becoming aware of it on their own. We can try, they just won't hear it. They can't hear it, right? People are that way. We don't change because somebody said something to us. We have to discover it for ourselves. But what you can do is create your heaven. Live in the reality that you know. I feel like in so many ways in my marriage, I have rejected so many of the status quo. Like I have, and I feel free from stuff. I can look at, debt in our bank account and I feel free. And my husband feels like the house is burning. And I can look at, the journey and, the 10 steps forward, 20 steps back. I can see all of that and I can feel like, oh, I'm so guided. And my husband wants to curse God, right? Like some examples. I have found the liberation in me. So can I just be in it? Can I just be? There's nothing to do. Just be in it and then experience him, love him, let him, allow him, honor him, accept him. Okay, and then the last piece I want to say to you around this is, can you take this to the next step and admire him? This one is tough to do when it's really real, from a real place. Can you admire him? Not just for the things that you like that he does, but do that too, right? Like my husband always puts the kids to bed. He just does it without fail. And I just get to decide when I want to put the kids to bed. Oh, it's a very lovely arrangement for me. And so I praise him and I admire him and I admire his devotion. But it goes, it's gratitude, but then it's deeper, right? Admiration, it's appreciation, but it's also like seeing deeper into who they are, how this represents the kind of person that they are. And so we can do that with the things we like, right? Like I can say, you're such an incredible father. You're so devoted. I see that because I see how you go tuck the kids into bed every night. But can we also do that with the things that drive us crazy? Like how often he complains about his job, or how often he leaves his socks in a certain place, or how he clings to old ways, or any of it, right? Any of it. Can you actually find something to admire about how that action represents the kind of person that he is? I want to try to give an example. But I really I can't convey enough how much this has transformed things for us. Because when I can see him this way, yes, stuff he says hurts. This is painful. You can see very clearly this is not just like a peace and happy, joyful place for me, right? It's not. But I can receive him because I see things this way. Like we can still experience deep intimacy, even though we don't see everything the same. Here's a perfect example. He's having a faith crisis right now, which is very challenging. So, but as he questions God and all the things, and I find this tendency to want to defend God as if God's feelings are going to be hurt or something. I can take a step back and see that he is asking for a different experience with God. He's actually asking for a different God. And I'm like, thank goodness, because the God he was worshiping before was very transactional, like Old Testament kind of God. And I'm like, look at the kind of man he is. He wants depth. He wants what's real. He wants more than the surface level. That's the kind of man I married. Can I admire? Even in the things that drive me nuts. They're so hard. And again, I'm going to just circle back and say, this is impossible unless we create trust in ourselves, unless we do all this work with ourselves. And that is why I run an intimacy coaching program for women. It's because I want you to be so connected to you that it allows you to be free to deeply connect with others around you. Trust with yourself, that is intimacy with yourself. Understanding your feelings and your desires, your triggers and your values and all of that, that is intimacy with yourself. And when we do those things, it keeps us always able to come back to a state of sovereignty, always able to come back to our divinity, the goddess that is within us, that lives within us. It's intimacy is that key. And feminine energy, which those go hand in hand in my world. I don't see a huge difference between the two. So that is why I've created the program that I've created. In that program, I do not just ramble for an hour like I feel like I did today. It's very co-creative. It's very much about soul excavation, and there is a lot of tools to help you go deeper and deeper with yourself, to be in that state of radiance so that you can call up everyone around you. And that's what we've been called to do. It's not always easy, is it? It's not always easy to be the light and be the visionary one and be the one that sees the possibilities and sees the vision and sees beyond and see what's possible, to be the torchbearer in that way. It's not easy, is it? And that's why we need each other. And that's why I've created this program. And I also am this kind of coach that I am because when I teach it, I live it. I stay in it. I stay very present to it. And one of the things that my clients have often reflected to me is one of their favorite things about me is that I always go first. So I try very hard to not just say stuff, like teach stuff because somebody else said it was a good idea. I live what I am teaching. We can't always change our tangible circumstances like that. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but who are we being in that? And how can we actually ditch the illusion completely that this is bad or wrong, that our husband is actually holding us back, and actually just be in co-creation with him, just love him, experience with him. Although I will say that, and this may or may not apply to you, we haven't ever talked before, but there are a lot of women whose husbands do all of that for them, and it actually is a turnoff at a certain point. Like it can be a struggle with desire and that magnetism toward our partner at times, if they are always just looking to cater to us, because we want them to be fulfilled too, right? So I don't know if that applies at all, but I just wanted to say, if you do have some of those feelings or haltings or etc., like oftentimes women will feel so bad, like my husband does everything for me, I need to just blah blah blah, right? Accept him, love him, appreciate him, give him sex or whatever it is, right? But the reality is, like, if he sometimes that's not how it feels, and that's okay. There's like reasons for that. It makes sense. Do men typically desire the same intimacy and depth that we're seeking? Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Honestly, I believe they all do secretly, but it's been conditioned out of them. They're not supposed to want depth and stuff. Like, I mean, it's been conditioned out of all of us, really. Like, we're not even supposed to say, like, I want to be cherished and adored, or I want you to tell me I'm beautiful or stuff. But all that stuff lives in us. Like, it's been in us since we were little. So I actually think that they do. Somewhere deep down, they do. But they may even outwardly say they don't, because times that they've tried to share, they've been criticized, rejected, tried to be fixed, etc. And so then it makes them really reluctant to want to share. Even if you haven't been the one, which, in a marriage you probably have, right? Like, we hurt each other and we're figuring it out as we go. We were all raised in the same society. But even if you haven't been primarily the one that has hurt him or has, you're always there saying, like, I'm here, I can hold space and whatever. He may have so much conditioning inside of him that's like, you will be a pussy if you open your mouth right now. Do not say a word, like, that he can't. And so that's hard, right? Lots of compassion for our men. Our men are really struggling. They really are. And that's where it's like, we have to, like, we are the torchbearers, guys. And women hate that. We're like, why do I have to be the one to go first always? We are the torchbearers. And it makes sense. We're moving into a new phase of the planet, which is more feminine energy. We are gifted in feminine energy. So even though it's also been conditioned out of us, it's also our gift, right? We've been given a lot more permission to go to some of those deeper places. The depth is feminine energy. So what we're actually calling our husbands to is more feminine energy in some regards. Calling them to feel feelings and, share and express and etc. That's actually calling them into their divine masculine, different than their masculine energy. where there's a beautiful balance and flow of masculine and feminine energy. That's what we're calling them into. We can't push them there. We can't use our masculine energy to get them there. We can only invite them in. And the best way we invite is when we embody our own divine feminine. All right, my loves, I didn't get to do any card pulls. I just talked forever. I really hope that this has been beneficial for you guys. I would love to hear, shoot me a DM. And more than anything, if this has called to you and resonated with you at all, like shoot me a DM and let's get on a call and let's explore what different like options might look like to be able to work together so that you don't have to feel like you're doing this alone. It makes all the difference. Love y'all. Bye.